Have you noticed it lately? That you've been walking a little less than you used to? Maybe it started with skipping a morning stroll because your knees felt stiff. Then came the days you just didn't feel up to it, or the weather gave you an excuse to stay in. And before you knew it, what used to be a daily rhythm, those peaceful walks, those small moments of movement, had quietly faded from your life. It's subtle, not dramatic. You don't fall down or make a big announcement. It just slips away. And if you're honest, maybe you've wondered, is this just part of getting older? That thought, the one that creeps in during the quiet moments, can feel like a whisper of defeat. You don't say it out loud, but it's there. Maybe this is just how it goes. Maybe your body's telling you it's time to slow down, to sit more, to let go of what you used to do. And yet, part of you resists that idea because you haven't given up. You're still here, still paying attention, still wanting more life, not less. And what I want to tell you, what I need you to know, is that walking less doesn't have to mean your world is shrinking. It doesn't mean your strength is gone. It might simply mean that your body, after 6 or 7 or even 8 decades of hard-earned experience, is asking for a new way of being cared for. Let me share a story. His name was Mr. Halverson. He was 74 when I first met him. A quiet man, polite to a fault, with hands that had once built furniture and a heart full of old jazz records and memories of fishing trips with his brother. For most of his life, walking had been part of his day. Nothing special, just something he did without thinking. Until, one day, he noticed he was thinking about it too much. The ache in his hip lingered longer. His balance felt uncertain on gravel. And worst of all, he said, was the feeling that people might be watching, noticing how careful he'd become, how slow. So he started skipping his walks. First on rainy days, then on days that were too warm or too cool or just too quiet. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't call it anything. But he told me later that it felt like a door had quietly closed behind him. What Mr. Halverson was experiencing wasn't weakness. It wasn't laziness. It was his body trying to adapt, trying to say, I need something different now. He hadn't failed. He hadn't broken. But no one had told him that there were other ways to move forward, ways that felt better for the body he had now, not the body he had 20 years ago. And that's the heart of this conversation today. Not about pushing harder, not about fighting age, but about learning what your body needs and giving it to yourself with compassion and intelligence. Let's begin with what's really happening when you find yourself walking less. Because the truth is, aging changes everything, but not all at once, and not always for the worse. As we move through our 60s, 70s, and 80s, several things begin to shift in our physiology. Muscle mass, for instance, begins to decline more rapidly after age 60 in a process called sarcopenia. It doesn't mean your muscles are gone. It means they need more attention, more intention to maintain. And joints? Think of them like an old garden gate. Still beautiful, still functional, but they need oiling, gentle handling, a bit more time to swing open fully. Circulation also becomes a key player. The blood vessels stiffen slightly over time, and that affects how oxygen and nutrients move through the body. That might explain why short walks can leave you more tired than they used to, or why your legs feel heavy even before you've gone a block. And balance, so easy to take for granted in our younger years, becomes a delicate orchestration of vision, inner ear, reflexes, and strength. When one of those systems shifts even slightly, the whole experience of walking can start to feel uncertain. But perhaps the most overlooked factor isn't physical at all. It's psychological. It's the silent dread of falling, the self-consciousness, the quiet resignation that maybe it's better not to try than to try and feel frustrated or embarrassed. And that right there, that's the beginning of the cycle. Walk less because it feels hard, lose a little more strength, feel even more unsure, walk even less, and so on. It's a loop. But loops can be interrupted, cycles can be rewired, and that's where we begin. Not with walking further or faster, but with a new kind of ritual. The first thing I ask my patients to try isn't a long walk, it's a 5-minute practice, a gentle joint-warming ritual done right from your bedside before your day begins. Picture this: You wake up, sunlight sneaking past the curtains, and instead of swinging your legs out and standing right away, you pause. You begin with a few slow circles of your ankles, then your wrists. You roll your shoulders forward, then back. You stretch your fingers like they've just remembered something important. This isn't exercise. It's not about burning calories or checking a box. It's about saying hello to your body. It's like oiling those hinges. A little movement in the joints sends a signal. We're still here. We're still working together. You'd be amazed how something so simple can transform how the rest of your day feels. That gentle motion reduces stiffness, boosts circulation, and, perhaps most importantly, builds trust between you and your body again. You're not launching into action. You're preparing the soil before you plant. And just like that, you've begun the day with movement, with intention, with a small but powerful reclaiming of rhythm. Once that foundation is set, we can begin to think about adding more motion, not by pushing, but by weaving it into the day in short, manageable pulses. I call it the circulation boost. It's the idea that 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, can be more sustainable than one long, exhausting effort. For example, when you're talking on the phone, try walking slowly around the room instead of sitting. If you live in a small space, walk the hallway 3 times while the kettle boils. Create tiny rituals. Walk during the length of 2 favorite songs. Movement doesn't have to be epic to be effective. In fact, these short bursts of motion can wake up the body's energy systems in ways that feel surprisingly satisfying. There was a woman I once treated, Mrs. Eileen Foster. She was 82, sharp as a tack, but she had grown afraid to leave her porch after a fall she had experienced 2 years earlier. When I asked her to try walking to the mailbox just once a day, she looked at me like I'd asked her to climb a mountain. But we broke it down. First, she practiced walking from her living room to her kitchen 3 times each morning. Then we added the hallway. A week later, she was doing laps around her dining table. Finally, one morning, she told me, with a twinkle in her voice, that she'd gone to the mailbox and back, and the world hadn't ended. These little wins, they matter more than you think. They build a new narrative, a new relationship with movement. You begin to remember that your body can still carry you, in its own way, at its own pace. And yet, I know many of you hesitate, because when the body starts to feel unreliable, the last thing you want is to put yourself at risk. That's why the next piece is so crucial: support. And I don't just mean moral support, I mean physical support. Canes, walking poles, handrails. These are tools, not signs of failure. They are bridges. And every bridge, my friend, leads somewhere. There is no shame in using them. In fact, the shame is in how our culture has made people feel weak for needing them, when in reality, it takes courage to reach for what will help you move forward. There was another man, Henry, 69, who absolutely refused to use a cane because he said it would make him look old. I gently reminded him that staying inside, not moving, losing strength, that's what would age him far more quickly. After some time, he agreed to try a sleek, foldable walking pole. He found it gave him stability without drawing attention. More importantly, it gave him the confidence to get back outside. And that confidence began to ripple through other areas of his life. Because the truth is, the ability to move shapes how we see ourselves. And anything that protects that ability is worth embracing. You see, this isn't just about walking, it's about identity, dignity, connection. It's about waking up in the morning and still feeling like yourself, not a faded version, not a burden, but a person with agency, with choice. And sometimes, the smallest adaptations, a cane, a new routine, a different pace, can preserve something far greater than strength. They preserve the sense of being whole. And now, as we stand here together at this midpoint, I want to leave you with a question, not an answer, a question that I'll help you explore in the next part of this conversation. What if walking again, not as you once did, but in a new, deeply attuned way, could restore not just your body, but your sense of purpose, your sense of presence in the world? Because the next steps we'll talk about are not just physical, they're emotional, they're spiritual, and they're entirely within your reach. There's a quiet kind of strength that builds when you begin to trust your body again. Not because it performs like it once did, but because you've learned to listen more closely, to respond, to adapt, to meet it where it is. And from that place, from that renewed connection, we can begin to explore the next layers of support, strength, and subtle transformation. And it starts with something most people overlook entirely when they think about walking: posture and breath. You might not realize it, but how you hold yourself and how you breathe can change everything about how movement feels. As we age, it's common for posture to shift. Shoulders roll forward, the spine compresses, the head tilts down. It happens so slowly, so gradually, that we don't even notice the change until one day we catch a glimpse of ourselves in a window and don't quite recognize the person looking back. But posture isn't just about appearance, it's about mechanics. When your body curls forward, your lungs have less room to expand. Your diaphragm doesn't move as freely, and suddenly, something as simple as walking can feel tiring, not because you're weak, but because your body isn't breathing efficiently. I often teach something I call the string and sail visualization. Imagine a string gently lifting you from the center of your chest, like you're being drawn upward, soft but firm. Your shoulders fall back just slightly, not stiff, just open. Then, breathe in through your nose and imagine your lungs filling like sails catching wind. This isn't dramatic, it's subtle. But try it now, if you can. That one shift in posture and breath might feel like a light being turned on in a dim room. Suddenly there's space, energy, presence. And when you walk with that kind of alignment, even for a few steps, your body begins to remember what it feels like to move with dignity again. This connection between posture and movement isn't just physical, it's deeply psychological. When you walk tall, you feel different, more alert, more capable. I've seen it time and again in my patients. The shoulders go back, the breath deepens, and something in their eyes changes. They stop bracing for the worst. They begin to feel safe again in their own skin. And that's the soil in which confidence grows. Not from pushing harder, but from standing taller, breathing deeper, and allowing yourself to be seen. But even posture and breath, as powerful as they are, only come alive when they're connected to something real, something that matters to you. That's why I always say, anchor movement to meaning. Because we don't move just for the sake of movement. We move to connect, to participate, to belong. I remember one woman, Sylvia, 76, who had stopped walking entirely outside of her home. She told me it wasn't just her knees, it was the feeling that she had nowhere to go. No reason, no pull. So we talked about what she missed, and her eyes lit up when she mentioned a small bench in the park near her childhood church. "My granddaughter and I used to sit there and count birds," she said. "So we built a plan. We didn't focus on distance, we focused on destination, a place that carried memory, meaning." She started by walking to the corner, then the next block, and eventually, on a quiet spring morning, she made it to that bench and sent me a photo of her sitting there, eyes closed, sun on her face. That's what movement is for, that moment, that feeling. So I ask you now, is there a place, a person, a moment you miss? Is there a route you once loved? A cafe? A neighbor's porch? A quiet corner of a garden? It doesn't have to be far. It just has to matter. Because when the destination holds emotional weight, the effort feels lighter. The body moves not because it must, but because it wants to arrive somewhere that feeds the spirit. And when movement is tied to meaning, it becomes less about performance and more about participation in the world around you. This is the deeper truth I wish more people understood. That movement is not just a physical act, it's an emotional declaration. It says, I am still here, I still have places to go, I still belong in this world, and if walking has become difficult, or uncertain, or even frightening, that doesn't mean you're finished. It means it's time to recalibrate, to move not the way you used to, but the way your body asks for now, with care, with grace, with intelligence. What I hope you're beginning to feel, perhaps quietly, perhaps with some hesitation, is that this moment you're in, where walking has slowed or stopped, isn't a dead end. It's a threshold, a place between what was and what could still be, a place where new rituals can be formed, new rhythms discovered, new confidence earned, one steady, intentional step at a time. And here's something else I want to say directly and clearly: you are not broken, you are not failing, you are adapting. You've adapted your whole life to loss, to joy, to change, to growth. Your body may be asking for more support, more patience, more softness, but it's still asking. That means something. That means there's still vitality there, still movement, still life. So many people wait for the perfect moment to begin again. When the pain is gone, when the energy comes back, when the weather changes. But healing doesn't wait for conditions to be ideal. It begins in imperfection, in the half step, the small try, the willingness to start where you are. And that's what I hope you take from this: the invitation to begin again, not as a younger version of yourself, but as the wiser one who's still here, still learning, still walking. I've seen remarkable things happen when people let go of how things used to be and lean into how things could be now. I've seen men who thought they'd never walk without pain find freedom again through tiny, consistent efforts. I've seen women who hadn't left their apartments in months take their first walk around the block, holding their heads high. And in every case, it wasn't a miracle. It wasn't a breakthrough. It was a series of quiet decisions, made with care, made with love. A decision to honor the body they have, not grieve the one they lost. If there's one truth I've learned over decades of helping people move through aging, it's this: the body remembers how to heal when we stop punishing it and start partnering with it. When we shift from demanding to listening, when we replace judgment with compassion, and when we take just one step, however small, with hope rather than fear. You don't have to walk as far or as fast as you once did. That was never the point. The point is that you keep going, that you keep trying, that you keep showing up for your own life in the body you have, with the strength you carry, even if that strength looks different now. And so, if you're sitting there right now wondering where to begin, I want to say, begin with breath, with a gentle roll of the shoulders, with a walk to the next room, with standing tall just for a moment and feeling your feet beneath you. Start with kindness. Start with attention. Start small, but start. Because the road forward isn't measured in miles. It's measured in the decision to keep living fully, no matter what age you are. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know it's not always easy to confront change, to admit fear, or to hope again, but I see you. I see the strength it takes to even consider moving forward. And I believe in that strength, not because I've read it in a textbook, but because I've witnessed it again and again in people just like you. If something in this conversation spoke to you, if a story reminded you of your own, or a tip sparked a new possibility, I invite you to try just one of the things we talked about today. Not all 5. Not perfectly, just one small shift. Maybe the morning joint ritual. Maybe the 2-song stroll. Maybe simply standing taller and breathing deeper the next time you walk to the kitchen. And notice how it feels, not to perform, but to connect. This is not about fixing yourself. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a life to be honored, and there is still so much life in you, so much worth moving toward. Take that step. I'll be right here, cheering you on, every single one.